Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors. This week, Kyle and I try to find the next STI. I also drive a very fancy pickup truck. Genesis goes racing, and Volkswagen fixes a big problem. But first, a word from our sponsor. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Your elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a drive entirely its own. Brake kits, LED headlights, whatever you need, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, so let's get started with the comparison that you and I did a little while ago. Finally got published. So the idea here was Subaru introduced the new Subaru WRX TR in the US, or RS in Canada, and basically it was a better performing WRX, and the idea was like, how much does it bridge the gap between WRX and STI? But wait, there's no STI. So we grabbed a car that you and I both think is the next best thing, and that's the GR Corolla. We knew the GR Corolla was going to be better than it in every way on a performance side because it's more expensive, and that's what it does. So we just want to see how close the Subaru was. So, I don't know if there's any surprises. I don't think there was. I think it was pretty much what I expected.
Yeah, more or less. I think the funny thing was on numerous occasions I caught myself saying, and the more refined choice is the Subaru WRX, which is not something I ever expected to say ever. But again, like we mentioned it in the video, it's kind of funny that we've spent so long waiting for the WRX to be more refined, and now it is. And then Toyota comes along and makes something that is very unrefined, and we're all like, "This is amazing!" But it's so good.
It's also so expensive.
Well, and in Canada,
and it's getting auto, and I think that'll help its sales dramatically. Like the WRX, I remember they made the WRX sedan and hatch and manual and auto. Oh, sorry, just manual. And then when they switched to just the sedan with the auto, they were selling more than the other two body styles combined because people don't like driving manuals. But the WRX is kind of stuck in the middle. It's not GTI Civic Type R refined, but it's not as rough as the Corolla. And I remember when we first drove it last year, well, I guess it's like a year and a half ago now, immediately I was like, this is an STI. It's a programmable center differential. It can go sideways when you want it to. The interior is made of cheap plastic. Like it checked off every box. Makes a lot of noise.
Yeah, and it's fun, and the rear view mirror vibrates all the time.
But yeah, I mean, I likened the WRX TR to the Legacy Spec B, and so far no one's chased me down the street saying I'm wrong. But I mean, if you look at weight, power, upgrades, like it's very similar. The Spec B was so cool because it basically back then got a detuned version of the STI with better brakes and better suspension. Well, this is a 270 horsepower compact that's about the size of the old Legacy now with better brakes and better suspension. The brakes are a huge thing. WRX's brakes have always sucked since like day one. That's the first thing a lot of people do if they want to track them. And the ones in this, the Brembos, like they do make a big difference. You can hammer the brake repeatedly and they don't fade, and the suspension's stiffer, but it's no STI. It just doesn't have the differential drivetrain. You don't have the programmable center. You don't have the locking rear diff. Like that's what's missing. So,
but I mean, it's stiffer. What is it? It's like 5% stiffer. It's barely stiffer, and that's the thing is it makes the WRX still, shine in the way that it always has. It's a really good all rounder. Just the price gap is substantial. You can get a cheaper. The lower trims of the GR Corolla you can get for the same price as the WRX in the US, and that's great. You'll miss a couple features, not many though, because you'll get all the important stuff like the limited slip diff and all that. You'll just not get the looks. But in Canada, it is like a $13,000 difference between these two.
And you're also talking about the one we compared, which is a higher trim model in both countries. You could still get a base WRX for tens of thousands cheaper than a base GR Corolla.
True.
You won't get anything again, but the nice thing is, as much as it's kind of been refined, it's still got the most unrefined setup of here's a manual that's just going to send 50-50 power front rear and open diffs and off you go. And that makes it doesn't make it really quick, especially if you're trying to take it on a track, but it makes it so forgiving that you can just throw it in a corner and let the hammer the gas and hope it fixes it for you.
It's true. And you know, mentioning forgiving, I took shots at the WRX in this video because I don't like the shifter because it's a big rubbery mess, but
It always has been.
it is very forgiving. That's the thing, is you can throw it around as quick as you want. It's gonna be fine. And so yeah, there's still a certain charm and appeal to the car.
And like the old STI, and the WRX has done this for a long time, you can almost engage the gear for like first gear without even any throttle. I'll just grab and be like, okay, here we go. So it's not an easy car to stall. Anyway, moving on to a fancy pickup truck. So I drove, I was actually right after that comparison, a Denali Ultimate. So it's the 2024 GMC Sierra 1500 Denali Ultimate. Basically, as I say in the video in the story, the Denali was GMC's like, this is our fancy version. It started on the Yukon in the very late 90s or early 2000s. And then remember the Sierra C3? They did that for 1 year, and I think 2001 or 2002. And then the next year they changed the name to Denali, but it was like their fancy truck. And I remember when it came out, I was like, why is all this luxury stuff in a pickup? Like, this is ridiculous. But they saw the market emerging, and nowadays everything they own has a Denali, and it's kind of watered down. So now they need to step it up with the Denali Ultimate. And it's not just a name. Like, basically it gets all the optional stuff from the Denali included, and it gets some unique parts on top. So there is something to it. I mean, the grille alone is different and stands out. So if you know trucks or this truck, you'll be like, oh, that's the... And the grill looks way better because it's like a dark chrome. They call it Vader Chrome. And
it's Father Chrome.
Vader Chrome badges too. But it looks nice, and it's I've always loved their multi-pro, I think they call it, tailgate, which is cool because you can open a little pass-through if you need to get something light, and then it turns into steps when you need to get in.
Yeah, very clever.
The interior is amazing. Like, it does rival luxury cars with the real wood, and it's all engraved with the topographical map of the Denali Mountain. They have the latitude and longitude on the Ultimate badge. The leather's nice. It's pickup trucks are probably the most spacious cabins out there for like a two-row vehicle. You can fit 5 adults, 3 in the back row, and they're probably not even touching elbows. It's pretty ridiculous, but it's still a truck. It is sort of a luxury vehicle first and a truck second because it's got very road biased tires. The suspension's really set up for road bias. What it really is for rich people that need the capabilities of a truck because maybe they have like a 30-foot RV, or they have a horse trailer or something. They need a fifth wheel to tow, but they don't want to have to settle for an ordinary vehicle. And it's a small market, it's niche, but this really does the job. And on nice roads, it is so smooth on the road. Like, it's crazy how it wafts down. Rougher roads, I'd still say the Ram 1500 Limited drives better, mainly because there's an air suspension, and that could swallow up so much more than the adaptive here. But yeah, I get its appeal. If you want a real truck, this isn't it. If you want a real luxury car, this isn't it. But if you need a combo, this is one of the main ones. And I mean, that market's there for a reason. Like, you've driven a couple. The Capstone, is that the top Toyota now?
The Capstone is the top Toyota. I'm not sure it really competes with these on that level. It's nice, but it's not, oh my God, I'm genuinely in a luxury car nice. But I did drive the Tungsten. Yes, the Ram 1500, the new one for this year. And I'm so excited to get back in it because, yeah, that is... I've driven this too. I think it was a year or two ago that I've driven the same truck. Not the exact same one, same trim. And more than that, the Tungsten is the one where I was like, okay, well, this is a luxury car.
I drove the Limited 2 years ago on the road rally, and it's like as expensive as this and nice, but I guess Rams are the same point. We're like, well, we need a more ultimate name because, you know, Limited's not what it is. And Ford, I think, is hitting that point where like everything's platinum. They need to get a new step up from it.
inflation is a real thing, even for trims of trucks, apparently, where it's like, like, I mean, we've seen it in the car world elsewhere, right? It's like it used to just be an M3, and now there's an M3 comp. And then there might be a higher M3, or with the AMGs, it's like, well, there was a bunch of AMGs, now there's the Black Series. So, this was a natural progression.
The M3 Comp CS Super Lagra, yeah. Yep, it happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, tungsten, the platinum, I mean, you can't go wrong. Even the high country Chevy, like it's a genre that exists.
Yeah.
So I don't remember how many weeks ago, but we were talking about who should join F1, and one of us said Genesis. I think it was me. Maybe it was you. It was you. All right. It was. That's right. No, maybe. I said Genesis. You said Fiat.
Yeah. That's right. Whoops.
So very close. They are going to WEC, so the World Endurance.
Makes more sense.
Yeah, you know what it does, because they made those Gran Turismo cars, and they made the street one, and then they made the race one. It won't look the same, but that's probably what they're going to base their hypercar off. I assume they're going in the hypercar category, because they have nothing to compete in the GT class unless you're going to.
I think they did actually in their statement. I think they did confirm that it is LMP H or LMPDH.
Yeah, LMPDH or something. Yeah, because I mean, you're not going to put a G70 because you have to make a street version somewhat like your car. It's not going to go run against AMGs. So yeah, even if they don't do well at the start, because no one really ever finds success right away, just the fact they'll be out there with Porsches and the Toyotas and the Cadillacs and the Ferraris, like it's a great move for them. You need to evolve that brand, and as I've said on this podcast a couple of times, they need to get some newer platforms and more powerful drivetrains, but this is all going in the right direction.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, well, every one of the Germans competes in some level of professional motorsport and a top tier. Cadillac does as well, right? And so Genesis, I think, will agree, you and I will agree, that it's, if not there in terms of its entire lineup, it's getting there. And so this just adds to the legitimacy. They'll be seen on a global stage. I'm so excited to see where this goes.
And it supports sort of where the brand's trying to go, because as you said, about all the Germans are either in the GT class or the prototype class, and Toyota has always been there too. Now they do Toyotas at Lexus because it makes sense. That's not sort of Lexus's image, where it is Toyotas. And GM for years did the Corvette with the Chevy race team, but now they want to switch over to the Cadillac. I mean, the Corvette's there too, but yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. It seems there's like almost a mini resurgence in racing right now. The team's trying to get into F1. The team's doing this. Like Ford made the GTD Mustang say they were in the same position. Like they didn't have something that could go in the GT class, so they're like, okay, here's a car. Yeah,
and Multimatic was done building Ford GTs. They needed something else to build.
Exactly. So yeah, no, it's a good time to be into motorsports, and I think the next 2-3 years is going to be pretty exciting. Moving on to the Volkswagen Taos. So I really like the Taos. I've been saying for years, its biggest drawback is the dual clutch transmission. We almost bought one. It was a finalist, but the trickiness was just too much. I could live with it, but other family members couldn't. So Volkswagen, like pretty much every other car in their lineup, said, all right, it's gone. Here's an 8-speed. And they updated the engine, which was unexpected. And it's not just like they plugged in a computer. They replaced a lot of mechanical parts, and it's up to 174 horsepower, which 16 horsepower is not a big deal, but it always felt more potent than it was. So if it's even more so, that's great. The interior looks a lot nicer. Again, it was always fine. Yeah. The exterior was gorgeous. Then they messed with that, though. They put a Toyota nose on it.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning earlier in the week that it looked like a Corolla Cross, and I mean the green probably doesn't help here, but yeah, I see what you mean. Although I also see a lot of ID4, mostly in the headlights. I'm not sure about that contrasty part in the lower grille, but otherwise, I mean, yeah,
they in the presentation really related it to the Atlas of all their SUVs, like this being their smallest, not being their biggest. But I guess the Atlas is their new design language, and like you said, they've also combined ID4, so it's kind of confused. In the back, it's totally Atlas with the light bar, the light up logo, and in the front, if you just look at the lights and the headlights, I kind of get it. But that I don't know that girl thing. I think it's something that in like a year or two, there's gonna be toned down. They're not going to redo it, but they'll change the colors or make it one color or something because
There will probably be different trims, right? There'll be a black edition or whatever, and it'll just be
there is,
blacked out.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
SE black, and that's probably gonna be a sweet spot again, like it was before. So anyway, I am super excited to try one because we need our lease is up and it's almost time for a new car, so this could get back on the list.
Yeah. Excellent.
And speaking of changes, GM and Hyundai have released a statement saying that they are going to get together on future, well, it was like passenger, commercial, and electric, and like all these different things, like as vague as they could be without being specific. So
Mhm.
it's interesting where and what they're going with here. It sounds like it is more passenger car than like heavy trucks. Uh, I don't know who needs what or what's going on because they were with Honda and they made one vehicle and then Honda kind of left. And GM is trying to do a lot of electric and they do a lot of electric well, but some need a little work. So if they can get some of Hyundai's EV know-how, I don't know what Hyundai wants back. Maybe some V8s for Genesis. I don't know.
It's yeah, I don't understand. It was was GM just going through the phone book and like, well, we did a partnership with Ford for the transmissions. Honda, that didn't work out. Next is okay, Hyundai, let's give them a call. Like, I just I thought maybe it would have to do with Hyundai's push for hydrogen in its commercial vehicles.
They
I
did say
thought
hydrogen. That was included in there too.
Yeah,
They
so
said everything.
so I was like, that kind of makes sense. But to your point, like, what does Hyundai get out of this? And that's a weird thing to ask that I don't think any of us would have asked 10 years ago. Uh, but I don't know what GM can offer. I mean, that seems mean. It's not that they don't have anything that Hyundai doesn't need. It's just that anything that they do, Hyundai already does. Like both of their EV platforms are very far in development already. So I don't see any of them borrowing for that.
They're both very they're both fairly robust, but I know the 3-row Genesis said it was on that same platform that they currently use, but we were both like, really? Just like when you see a Hummer beside a Equinox EV, you're like, this is the same platform. So
When would you ever see those two together? That's weird.
yeah. So maybe Hyundai is looking to use the largest Ultium for some Genesis. I like to think of things like this. Like it'd be awesome if manufacturers for like sports teams and they get together like, okay, so you trade us some Ionic platforms to build our next EV, and we'll trade you some small block V8s for your Magma line of cars that's coming up.
It could even be that, I mean, like we said, Ultium and EGMP are both multiple years in now, at least being available to customers. Like they've been in development for a decade at this point. I wonder if maybe this is working on a next generation platform that is just one for all.
That was GM's thing forever. Like I remember before I ever got in this industry and they showed the skateboard platform, they called it. This is like 20 something years ago. And you're all like, there's not gonna be one platform you put different bodies on. Like you're stupid. But that's where we are almost already. So you're right. If they're developing one that like this is extra small, small, medium, large, extra large, and they do it together. And I mean, it's so much less unique than it used to be where the motors, the transmissions, like those are all built in house and they're did different things in refinement. Now it's like, well, that electric motor produces power.
Well, and and they can that can still be unique. They can still develop their own unique motors. I mean, we've talked about how different the Ioniq 5N is versus the Kia EV6 GT. So I don't see why. I think there's the cost of investment with moving to an EV future are so high anyway that these two getting together to share the costs makes a lot of sense, and there will still be a way to diversify tons of different products. So maybe it's that. I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah, like I think we're looking too deep into it. I think it is basically they're probably going to share knowledge on tech to make batteries more efficient, or maybe the unicorn solid state battery that we're waiting on, or how to use the hydrogen and the batteries together. So who knows? We'll see. But it was just interesting because I did not see those two partnering up. I mean,
no,
they're like Hyundai is way bigger, I think, than a lot of people give them credit for, like size wise. So this is like two monster manufacturers getting together. Like I'd argue Hyundai is bigger than the Honda. So it's like a more equal partnership than the last one GM had.
Yeah.
Because you got to remember Hyundai just makes passenger cars as one division. They make a lot of other stuff, like especially on the commercial side, just like GM does. So we need Hyundai buses in North America.
We do.
All right, well, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have the question of the week. This is the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. We'll be back in a minute. eBay Motors is here for the ride. With the parts you need at the prices you want, and with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, they're guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, so this week, our question of the week is inspired by the Taos, where I said for years it was needing a new transmission to be great, and I think that may be the case now. I need to drive it. So I was thinking, what other vehicles out there are good or really good vehicles, but there's just one thing that needs to be changed, and then they could be great. I have one example for sure, and I had another one that I forgot, so I got to think about it again. But do you have any?
I have a few.
We can start then.
I feel like a lot of my answers lately have been Toyotas for the question of the week, and that is pure coincidence. So I will say, can I use a car that just recently disappeared?
Okay, maybe it's what could have saved it.
Oh, yeah. There we go. I'll use that as the rationale. So the Camry TRD, that is now gone. It was a transmission tune away from greatness. That transmission was problematic because there were paddle shifters. I mean, they were glorified buttons, but you never had full control over the transmission and when it would shift. It was more or less just telling the transmission how many ratios it had access to. And that was an important distinction. But I think otherwise it was a very good, affordable sports sedan.
I think you've just said the problem with a lot of Toyota manual automatic transmissions. They always do that. It drives me nuts. I mean, not the sportier ones, but so the first one is one I've, again, just like the Taos, I've harped on way too much. But imagine a Acura TLX without a trackpad. If it just had a conventional infotainment system, and then it would be set for me. I'd be keeping an eye on those used values for my second car.
I mean, it still struggles with the Camaro aspect of being huge outside and tiny inside.
I don't care.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
There's a lot of cars like that.
Okay.
All right, what's the next one?
Oh, shoot.
You see,
I blanked.
Okay. Yeah. So my other one is, again, something I drove recently and I talked about, and it's very similar to what you said. It's the Ford Ranger Raptor. Its 10-speed is sort of at odds with what you want to do at times, and it's just a software tune away from that being so much better, because when it catches the right RPMs of the engine at the right time, it flies. But so many times it's delayed, or it puts you in too low of a gear, I guess high of a gear, that it doesn't let the engine really spool up. So yeah, that one too just needs a tune. And I mean, that's what we said about the Mustang previously, and look what they've done with the new one. So
yeah. Okay, I thought of my other one.
All right.
It's another Toyota. No, it's the Crown Signia, the new one. I really, really enjoy it. I think that Toyota missed an opportunity by not including the Hybrid Max powertrain as an option. The other one's fine, but it's a Crown. It's supposed to be the flagship, and the sedan has the more powerful engine. So why doesn't the SUV?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I think it's purely because they don't want it stepping on the toes of the sedan. But you're right, like, let people have the choice.
Yeah.
All right, my final one. I'm going to GM. See, I'm spreading the love around here.
Okay.
It's one that I've just never understood why not. Is why with the they change the names all the time, but the ZR2 Bison or whatever the most off-roady Chevy is right now, and the AT4 AEX 7395, whatever they call it, why they never offered the supercharged V8? Like, it was in the Camaro the whole time being used. It's still in the CTS5 Blackwing or CT5V Blackwing, so they still even make it. You could put it in more cars and it would have fought against the Raptor and the TRX better, but I don't know. I mean, the 6.2 is a nice engine, but let people go crazy in those cars.
Yeah. Oh, wait. I agree with that. Sorry, I just realized you did three. I'm doing three, and I'm not going to use a Toyota.
Nice.
Um, More BMWs with the inline six should have the manual transmission. I say that after driving the Z4 last week. It is such a good transmission, and it just doesn't exist in anything other than M cars. Well, the Z4. But then, other than that, if you want a manual BMW, you have to do M2, M3, or M4. And I just think that for a company that is trying to sell itself as an enthusiast oriented company, come on, just some more manuals.
Oh, okay. This is a bonus because this is you and I together. We've talked about this and we both fully agree. Take all of the tuning from the Lexus LC and put it in the IS 500. It has a similar engine and everything, like tune the transmission, the way the exhaust works, everything. It's like such a night and day difference between the two. And it's like, just do the same. And the IS 500 would be so much better. So
fair. Look, you did a Toyota.
Oh, I did. Well, yeah. No, I did a Lexus.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So that's it for question of the week. We're going to take a longer break. And when we come back, we are going to talk to Lucid about the, well, I was going to say upcoming Gravity, but pretty much the Gravity that's about here.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk with them, and then I'll have Colin Wood on to talk F1. And we had a lot going on this week, so we'll quickly cover that. eBay Motors is here for the ride. Okay, everyone, let's take a minute and talk about the one that got away. The vehicle you once owned and for whatever reason had to get rid of, and to this day fully regret ever doing so. For me, it's my Subaru SVX. It was a 1997 model, which was one of the last years it was ever sold here. It was black on the outside and it had the beige leather and suede interior. It was in amazing condition for its age because it was just a one-owner vehicle. The interior was near flawless. The paint was pretty good considering it was about a 20-year-old car when I got it. I just loved everything about it. I loved the quirkiness because I love oddball cars. I love the window within the window, the power button on the gear shifter, the way the dash was laid out and you could hide the radio behind the fake wood panel. The flat six was just so smooth and it was all-wheel drive, and although it wasn't overly quick, it still had enough power. The problem was, within a year of buying that car, I ended up selling it because I got a great deal on another vehicle. And to this day, I regret doing so. Part of the reason I sold it was, although it was in great shape, it wasn't perfect and there were things that needed to be fixed, like the air conditioner, reservoir, some bearings, and other bits. And back then there was no eBay guaranteed fit program, so finding parts for such a rare 20-year-old car was not easy. Luckily, I sold it to someone who not only cared for it, but took the time to fix it up, and every once in a while I do get to still see it, and I still regret ever getting rid of it. I am constantly online looking for a new SVX because now I have a system that I can find parts for it, but I haven't come across one that's both in the right condition and the right price range. With over 122 million parts, you can make sure your number one ride or die stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Okay, welcome back. This week we have a very special guest on. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
Yeah, my name's Derek Jenkins, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Lucid Design and Brand, and I do all the design work behind Lucid's cars.
That's a pretty good job. Kyle and I have sampled the Air a couple times, and I can speak for both of us when I say we're blown away by that thing. But we are here to talk Gravity this week. So I'll start. So the upcoming Gravity is, as we've just kind of talked about, the second vehicle from Lucid. Was it always the plan to go SUV after the sedan?
It was. I mean, when we first really got things going in 2015, there was a lot of discussion about what the first vehicle would be, and that was between the design team, certainly Peter Rawlinson, and ultimately we decided that the sedan would be the first product and the SUV would be the second. So that dates back all the way to before we were even Lucid. We were a company called Ativa, and set that plan in motion, and we've been at it till this day.
Oh, wow. That's good planning. So It's probably good for you to see your products coming to light after all these years.
It is. It's thrilling, and it's been a quite a time span to get to this stage. But starting a car company is not for the faint of heart. I always say it's really there's so much to it beyond the design and engineering of the car. You really have to build the DNA of the company from scratch and really determine what you stand for and what things you're going to avoid and to see the product coming to market and see consumers enjoying the car and enthusiasts alike. It's just thrilling. It's really the ultimate reward to being in the auto industry, quite frankly.
Very cool.
Yeah, very. Derek, since you mentioned that about getting the message out about Lucid and starting with the Air, and now since you've been planning this whole time to have Gravity follow it, how closely related are these two vehicles? Like, how can you explain their connections to potential customers?
Yeah, well, I mean, they're closely related in certainly in DNA, right? Whether it's design DNA or the technology itself. Of course, they share a lot of core modules and components, battery, motors, core drivetrain. But at the same time, there's some pretty big differences. That early on we were, studying whether to directly simply just make an SUV body exactly on the Air chassis. And we knew that we wanted to enhance what we call the space concept. The Air has a wonderful space concept for a luxury sedan, and we needed to do that equally compelling as a three-row SUV, which then led us down this path of a greater change to the overall body and chassis of the vehicle. So there's a significant evolution there of Lucid platform to make it optimized as a three-row SUV. And that involves everything from the space concept, meaning having a lot of interior space, to the chassis dynamics, to the weight reduction of the vehicle, and even things like safety. All of that was taken into consideration when we decided to make a greater change over the Air as a platform. But the philosophy behind the vehicle in terms of space, efficiency, aerodynamics, aesthetics, those are very closely related.
Interesting.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So sticking with styling and design, as you've mentioned, you chose early on to make it a little different than the Air. What was the inspiration or direction you were trying to go more with the Gravity compared to the Air?
Yeah, I mean, I think Air is low, obviously, and very sleek, and I've always said it has a lot of kind of aircraft influence. It's not something that is intentionally styled to look aggressive or super sporty. It's meant to look sleek and kind of effortless, like Air, and that's kind of how we ended up on the name. And we wanted Gravity to have that DNA, but speak even more to its presence on the road. So we wanted the car to look a lot wider and a lot more imposing coming down the road. So the front end is very much more vertical than Air. And that yet we wanted it to have that sleekness, that compelling sleekness, which works both functionally to offer up great aerodynamics. And then because the cabin is quite long and tapered, it serves us very well for space. So you end up with obviously a very spacious first and second row, but also an incredibly spacious third row. Yet that taper also elongates the cabin, which is optimized for aerodynamics as well. So there's a form function relationship to this very upright nose, yet super sleek tapered cabin that benefits, basically all things Lucid prioritizes, which is space, efficiency, range, aerodynamics, etc.
And I'm just happy the sun visors are mounted to the main glass, just like in the Air. That's my favorite feature.
Yeah, that's right. It was something we continued to study and look to make as optimal as possible. I almost think that the canopy effect of Gravity is even more compelling than Air because the cabin is that much larger in general. So especially when you're sitting in the second and third row, you have this amazing panoramic view forward, which is truly unique to Lucid products.
I just have a quick follow-up question to tie on to that, because
Yeah.
you know, it's so fascinating to hear about the two different form factors. Which one did you see as more of a challenge, or the team see as more of a challenge?
That's a good question. I think I can say confidently that the Gravity is more challenging, and the reason for that is, you know, we put a lot of, well, we saw Gravity as a big opportunity. It's a larger addressable market for this kind of three-row SUV. There's very few other players in the EV space in the three-row configuration. And the three-row SUV, if you think about it historically, is really oftentimes plays the role of a primary household vehicle, which means it has to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife. It has to do everything really, really well. And we took that task very, very serious because, you know, I've raised two boys and I have a family. I know what it's like to have the gear and the soccer stuff and the boogie boards and the, you know, the ski trips and all and just daily life, you know. And we always felt like somehow three-row SUVs have always had some, you know, you get a lot of space, but then the car has to be huge and heavy and not so fun to drive. Or you get the sporty SUV that's fun to drive and efficient, but has no space and utility. And so we really wanted to kind of bring the best of what we've experienced in three-row SUVs to a single vehicle, which I think is what most people expect. Well, turns out that's really hard to do. You know, it's really hard to balance all those things, keep the vehicle, overall dimensional vehicle, quite compact, reasonably compact, yet class up in interior space for both people and gear,
Mhm.
and yet seriously address range and efficiency at the same time, which translates to weight and aerodynamics, along with, of course, Lucid technology. And those things are hard to balance, especially from a design standpoint. But I feel like I personally, I feel like we've cracked that, and that we've got something pretty special with Gravity with respect to this vehicle space.
That was very thorough. Thanks. And you directly lead into our next question. So thanks for that too. You mentioned that this segment is still pretty fresh. So who do you see as natural competitors for the Gravity?
Yeah, it's funny because, you know, as the EV space grows and diversifies, and you know, I feel like the industry is genuinely trying to offer as much option to consumers as possible where it makes sense. And you know, I do think this three-row SUV area is even in the internal combustion space is somewhat limited, even if you're willing to pay a higher price in the segment, more like this premium and luxury category for three-row SUVs is still rather limited. And so we saw that as a real opportunity for us. We saw it as a real opportunity to improve that experience for consumers in that space. So, you know, we're going after what I would consider to be the traditional three-row SUV in that premium luxe space, which is anywhere from a GLS Mercedes, a X7, X5, Cayenne, Q7, XC90. It's in that mid-tone space. I would even argue for folks that are buying the extra large SUVs, Gravity can address a lot of those needs as well, because by space and volume and utility, we're right up there with those vehicles. So, but we can offer you the range and convenience of a Lucid electric vehicle, which is, I think, part of, especially if you think about that idea, if this is a primary family vehicle, people want to have that range and efficiency and know when they leave the house they've got 400 plus miles range every time they drive out the door. And so I do think this addresses that core segment of people, and can offer what I would consider true no compromise in that space.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah, they're, like you said, they're very limited. The super lux don't really play in this field, and then electric wise, I mean, you have, I guess, the new EX90 has a 3-row, and the EQS. I guess that's about it. Like, there's not much out there,
Yeah,
but
I mean, obviously, have Rivian R1S.
Yeah.
But and the Escalade's coming, but it's like we're talking about like 5 vehicles here, and some of them are still very much just sitting on internal combustion platforms. They're not truly optimized for for optimal EV usage. And so that's just the Lucid philosophy, is really all in on EV and get the maximum advantage from EV. And then of course we have our own in-house technology, which takes that even further, takes range further, allows amazing breakthrough packaging. Gravity has been able to keep the floor really low, so that enhances second and third row and cargo space, enhances driving dynamics. So you get a vehicle that it just handles incredibly nimble, much like, not unlike Air. I mean, I was just out in Arizona driving our pre-production cars on the track, and it's mind-blowing. I mean, it's truly mind-blowing what the vehicle can do. And yet here is 7 passengers, and it's like a 7-passenger sports car basically. And that's thrilling to me, because I've always wanted something like that especially in my three-row phase, where I really needed that.
Yeah, and something you keep bringing up about packaging. It's funny because there's so many people just look at the size of an SUV and figure it's got the most space. And Kyle and I have been in every single one, and it's a little surprising, some of the large ones, how bad the third row is, and then some of the so-called mid-size ones that look way smaller have a decent third row
That's
line
right.
packaging.
That's right.
So you've talked about sort of what you're going after with the vehicle and the segments. I think it's pretty fair to say the Gravity is going to surpass the Air in sales pretty quickly, because North America's SUV crazy. Does that
Totally.
also lead to a plan of having to expand your service network or expand to different segments of North America maybe you're not in right now?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, our retail plans and how we address the our own growing market is something that we're continuously studying and evolving. So we do have retail expansion plans on the books as we speak. So that's directly mapped to our projections and of demand for Gravity and Air, going forward, because we also see Gravity just drawing more attention to Lucid as a whole, which might also just bring more people to both products. And as we've most recently announced, we're looking beyond Air and Gravity towards to a more affordable mid-size vehicle and platform. And so that's when we really have to study closely how to expand our retail and service platforms.
All right. No, those are great answers, and you've given us a lot of good info for sure. If Kyle doesn't have anything else to add, I think we'll let you get back to your day now. I saw Gravity on the road recently. It took me by surprise, because it's like, oh, it's a Gravity, and it looks really nice. It looks really good.
Thank you.
I don't know if it was the one from where's the retail store, Kyle? Is it Square One?
It's at Yorkdale up here in
Yorkdale.
Toronto.
Yeah, so I don't know if it had anything to do with that, but
Okay, yeah, we do have one of our our show cars in Toronto right now. That's right. Yeah, we're planning some PR up there. We're even doing some photo shooting coming up. So yeah. So that would have been that was a show car. So that was a fully beautified car. So rare to see that driving around.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't remember where I was. I was in the city, like downtown. I just cornered my eye. I was like, "What is that?" And then after it left, I processed. Oh, that was Gravity. But I mean, not getting too off topic. I worked for an OEM in a previous life, and I remember having to take the brand new cars places for photo shoots and whatnot, and just praying like, "I hope no one sees me." I don't want people stopping me and asking me questions.
That's right. Yeah, it's always daunting when you're driving around in a prototype or something where it's just a handful of cars that you can't mess it up. So
yeah. All right. Well, thanks. We look forward to seeing them in person. I know Kyle saw the show car in person, and I haven't yet, but we look forward to when they're out and about and getting to sample one down the road.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate the time.
Thanks so much, Derek.
Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Welcome back to the show, Colin Wood, and we are going to talk about some more F1 news and rumors. And once again, by the time you see this, a race will have happened, but this is what we knew before it.
It's always fun. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's good. I'm watching. We were just chatting before we got on here. FP1 and FP2 just finished, and sometimes sometimes you could take a lot out of free practices, and sometimes it means absolutely nothing. So
Charles took out a lot of the tire barrier.
Yeah, that sucks. And he's made mistakes here before. There's actually a great clip of someone put together of like, maybe it was actually Formula One, of basically like all the great highlights that happened at the Baku races, all the crazy things. That was the Verstappen Ricciardo coming together. If you think about Hamilton like going straight on when he had that mistake, and then there's just a great clip of when Leclerc actually hits the wall, like he's trying to make that super tight corner going into like the old city part. And I'm pretty sure that's the clip where it comes on the radio and he just goes, "I am so stupid."
Yeah, just so stupid like 3 times. Yeah, that's the classic meme. And then people are saying he relived it today by doing almost different part of the track, but the same thing, just straight off in a corner.
Yeah, that's
fixed the car though. It came back in an FP2 and set the fastest time. So
good. Yeah, it's street circuits changed a lot of things. So we'll see if Red Bull continues to be terrible or not. It'll be interesting. So
and Lance Stroll said something in FP1 like, "This is not a car right now." What he's driving, it's not a car. And F1 made fun of it on Twitter by saying, "Good news, Newey's on board now."
Well, that's huge, right? Like it's funny. It's gonna change everything with that team, right? Like and it shows that Lawrence Stroll's serious. And the other indication is that they're eagerly trying to poach Verstappen, and then we'll send Lance off to work on another project. So we'll see if that all happens. But it's they've put together like a really solid team, and that Adrian Newey news has been coming forever and ever, but it's finally official. And you can't help but think that it really will make as big a difference as everyone thinks, right? Like they're going to get real pros in there to do what needs to be done.
And I even don't know if next year they're going to care that much, being the last year of regs. Like they are going to go all in on 26. So 26, Alonso retires. He becomes team principal. Lawrence goes and poaches Verstappen and Norris.
There you go.
And that's his team. They get to race together finally as a team, and Lance is off doing something else. He's driving an Indy or NASCAR or something.
I think Alonso will still be racing the first of 26, won't he? I can't remember the exact.
That's what they say right now, but
yeah, you think he'll I don't know. I think Alonso. It's actually a real mess, right? Because you could see if you got Alonso and they got Verstappen, you could see that they wouldn't give up. They'd be like, I don't see Alonso stepping aside when he's got this chance to be like, actually, I could do this. It would be a Rosberg Hamilton kind of a situation going on.
Yep.
So on the rumor side of things, there's a couple things. There's still looking at the Audi team and what the heck's going to go on there. Sauber right now. The most out there rumor I've seen is that Vettel will come back. I don't see that happening at all. More than likely, I guess it's really a toss up now between Bottas, which is a possibility, but I feel like they're probably looking in a different direction, and they're also looking at Gabriel Bortoleto, who's a Formula 2 guy, and apparently Mattia Binotto actually specifically said he was someone they were looking at. So it's not like some out there rumor; it's entirely possible. So
yeah, Bottas is a good driver, but I think he's getting to the point where he's not good enough to be the veteran someone wants to sign. So I think his days and seats are numbered.
Agreed. And they've already got Hülkenberg, right? So they've got their one veteran. They don't need two. That doesn't make a lot of sense unless they really want to just do it for like a carryover year. But I would actually think, again, if you're going to be, I guess they're coming in really as I could see, like, I would want a rookie. I want a rookie, get him in next year, get somebody up to speed, give him a whole year. And it's kind of like, doesn't matter. Do what you want to do. No pressure. The pressure will come the year after that, right? So.
And Bottas still, like, he has lots of years left to race, so he can go do maybe Indy or WEC. Like, there's lots of series he could go and have a great career and still.
Yeah, I follow. I don't follow actually. I think the only driver I follow on Twitter is Bottas. Actually, despite loving all this stuff, because he's always posting weird and wacky other funny stuff. Also, a lot of butt shots because he likes to be weird and wacky. So, but he actually posted something the other day, and I saw people commenting that he really needs like his own YouTube channel once he like retires from Formula One, because he does all this crazy stuff. He was just involved in I guess it's a charity race where they do these. I guess maybe I kind of knew about them. They're called like sea bikes. And it's like a bicycle on these pontoons, and it has big paddles, and you bicycle it and you go across the top of the water. And they went from somewhere in Italy to Monaco to raise money for some charity. And they basically, it's like you're on a team with like 3 or 4 other guys, and they race straight for like 24 hours. So he's always doing crazy stuff where he just like randomly shows up at some like Ironman competition and places third, and you're like, what? Like I think he's a fascinating character, and he'd probably be more interesting outside of F1. So
potentially, yeah.
Yeah. So the other interesting, and this is, I want to say there's some facts behind this, right? But it's sort of the wildest rumor out there is that kind of really getting in the weeds here. When Formula One first announced they were going to accept new teams from the future, right? There was Andretti, and there was also Hitech, which Hitech runs a Formula 2 team right now. And so it's well aware right now that Andretti has this issue, right, with basically with Formula One, and the U.S. government's getting involved. But that's because they made it past the FIA stage, where they first got approved by the FIA, and then they have this battle with Formula One. Versus Hitech never got past the first stage with the FIA, and so apparently there's some journalists who are well connected who are having this discussion that Hitech is actually suing the FIA for that first sort of dismissal because they believe that they have a credible team and that they should have been allowed. And they also are arguing that really the FIA should have no bearing on anything of any financial impact to the series or the teams, et cetera. So the discussions indicate that basically a certain amount of legal proceedings have already gone on, and that the Hitech actually had a credible case. And so the FIA is going to have to pay their legal costs. And then the next step is really like, what are the damages? And it may all be sort of handled potentially out of court. But what makes this more interesting is that the head of Hitech, former head of Hitech, when all this started, was Oliver Oakes, who's now the head of Alpine. So he's still involved in the series and maybe doesn't want to piss them off. Who knows, right? There's something going on there, and the lawyers are deeply involved. So.
Aren't they always?
Yeah, it's a whole different world, right? It's funny. So maybe the last, you and I, we should definitely talk about the McLaren thing, right? Sounds like the team orders have been given. That's how I'm reading it anyway.
Well, that's basically what they said, and that's how everyone's reading it. Is they finally come out and said they're going to push for Lando for the championship, and I mean, honestly, up to this point, they had him give back a win to Piastri the one race. And then last race, he was dive bombed, but he really couldn't keep up in pace. So, I mean, they've cost him points so far, but not a ton. And there's still a huge gap. So it might be too little too late, but I think they're just doing that because they want constructors for sure. And if your guys are racing each other, you can totally go full Alpine and take each other out and get no points. So
yeah, full Alpine. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if what we've heard in terms of quotes from people turns out to be true on the racetrack, right?
Exactly.
I think this will be a weekend where we see it, right? When you go to those corners, and I can't see anybody just being like sitting back. Like maybe you give them the place back afterwards if it was at the very end, but we've also seen that before where there's a lot of debate going on. So we've got a weekend to find out what the reality is. So,
and never know by the time they hear this, but I think they'll follow well enough. Like Piastri's still pretty young, second year. It's not like he's Alonso, who's just like, I've been here so long, who cares?
Yeah.
But you're right. Like he'll race hard, and if he ends up ahead of him due to a pit or passes him on the track because of a mistake, like later at the race, then give it back. Like last week, he should have slowed down and let him get second for the points. And then also had the first, he should have had, that's a handful of points, closes the gap a bit. But the only way I think the only way I think Norris has a chance is Verstappen has to like really screw up one of these races. Like he needs a no points.
Yeah,
either does. Like a DNF, or he gets so far behind he can't come back. So you just like get like 15 points on him in 1 week, and then it gets interesting.
Yeah, that's when it'll change. So we'll see. Anything can happen, and goodness knows, Baku street race, probably good chance of yellow flags, red flags, crashes, etc. Things always get dicey.
By the time people are listening to this, that may have already happened, or maybe Norris got crashed out and he got no points, and his hopes are over. But
yeah.
I do predict this is the week though. McLaren passes Red Bull for manufacturers. Only I think an 8-point difference. So that's not hard to make up. And if Perez continues to struggle and both the McLarens do well, you could get that.
We will see if your prediction is true next week.
Yeah. Watch it be the opposite. Both McLarens go out and Red Bull 1-2s or something.
Well, you can have some humble pie then.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll definitely have a lot to talk about next week as the season winds down and things start to heat up. Like I said, this track usually leads to some sort of incident, and a lot of places you can't get by if there's an incident. So red flags and safety cars for sure. There's not very many localized yellows, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
All right. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care.
Okay, so we're going to take a look at what's ahead. So this week was all about EVs, just like last week and most of next week. We're really in an EV kick right now, but
yeah.
We initially you had the Equinox EV because like that's the mainstream, and I had the Fiat 500e because it is one of, if not the most affordable EVs on the market, depending on your country. And then I got offered
very, very sensible choices. I should clarify just now.
Then I got offered the most ridiculous EV on the market right now, the Hummer, and not just the Hummer EV, but the Hummer EV 3-motor Omega Crazy Edition. So I thought, you know what? What's a better contrast than the 500e and the Hummer at the same time? So I've been splitting my time between the two, getting video and impressions. And you know what? I had a lot to say on both, and both mostly positive. I know the Hummer, I won't give too much away, but I know it gets so much flack because of what it is. Like, it's an EV, but it's 9,000 pounds and it has a battery the size of a small city and blah, blah, blah. But you know what? The buyer doesn't care about that. They want something that's just crazy, show-offy and cool. And it is. Like, it's ridiculous to drive in all the best and worst ways. But that's all I'll say for now. And the 500, it's a 500. You were in the Equinox, Kyle. How is that without giving too much away? Is it just an Equinox?
First, I just want to ask, which one has the smaller turning circle?
I think they're very similar because of the rear steer. Like that, I mentioned in the video, like that's a saving grace of the Hummer. If it didn't have rear steer, oh God, it would be a nightmare in the city because you're so high up and you're so wide. You're never really sure where your right side tires are. But yeah it turns tight without turning your Equinox.
It's true. Yeah, when we were out filming video together, I had to 3-point turn something, and then I watched you just U-turn. And I'm just like, what the heck? So, yes, the Equinox. I really wanted to like this. Sorry, I guess that's maybe giving away too much. I do like aspects of it, but as we've talked about on previous podcasts, I did not have the best experience with the Blazer EV. I really liked the Lyric, so this was my 4th Ultium experience because I've also briefly driven the Hummer, and there are good things about it because it is wildly efficient. Like I think people who are still worried about range don't realize like how quickly you can blow past quotes for most brands. This thing is quoted at just over 300 miles. Based on what I'm doing 360 miles on a charge, which is more than I think anyone needs for day to day. For most things, especially for what an Equinox is going to be doing. It's comfortable.
Or if you don't have enough battery range, just get a second battery and stack it on top like the Hummer. And then 112 kilowatt hours. And
put it on top. So make a battery sandwich out of your vehicle.
Well, yeah, that'll be the next one. Here's a third battery.
Yeah. So it's the front drive model. I have heard other outlets refer to it as a little sluggish. I think 213 or something like that horsepower is plenty. It's still quick. Front drive is good for most needs. I like it, but there are some hangups that I'll talk about in a future podcast that are kind of inherent to the Ultium platform right now.
Before we get to next week, some fun stats that I figured out or was told this week. So the Fiat has 116 horsepower and the Hummer has 830. So that's almost 7.5 times or something the power. I could fit 5 Fiat batteries inside the Hummer's one battery and I'd still have some space. And someone, when they saw my picture on Instagram, said my Subaru BRZ weighs less than the battery in that vehicle, and they are correct, which is hilarious. So the battery alone is heavier than a car. Anyway, moving on. So next week, I am once again splitting my time. Not, well, a pretty big contrast still, but we are doing a comparison, which I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah,
with the
me too.
BMW iX, as you call it, the right trim, which we haven't driven yet, and it's the 50.
I have. I drove it 2 or 3 years ago. Yes, it's the 50, the mid-grade trim.
The 60 is overkill. It's fun, but man, it's like the Hummer. It's like, I don't need to go this fast.
Yeah.
And against the all-new Ultium-based Acura ZDX.
Another Ultium car. But this one has CarPlay.
And it has big Acura DNA. So that's why I don't think you like these cars. It's just because you can't have your phone on there, and I could care less. So maybe that's why I like them.
There's
I was playing with Alexa, and so that should be a good comparison because BMW and Acura don't often match up in the same segment completely, but these two on paper are very similar in power, size, even price isn't far off. So yeah, it should be interesting.
And the interesting thing for me, at least going into it, is I think it's fine for me to say this. The Acura is the sportier choice. And I don't mean that as a slight against the BMW, but when I last drove it, right? It's not that it's like it's not that it's super sporty. That thing is really focused on a very comfortable, easy drive. And so I'm very much looking forward to this one.
Yeah, and the Acura is the Type S, so it's their fancy pants.
Yeah.
And then I'm also driving a Corvette E-Ray. Oh, right. More hybrids, right?
So
It's like a electric car. It's got a motor in the front, right?
Yeah, it'll go at least a few hundred meters on nothing but battery power. The e-hybrid is, or the E-Ray is very interesting because it's the regular Stingray just with a hybrid powertrain. It's not like they've downsized the engine. There's still a small block V8 in there. It's just now you have even more power and all-wheel drive, and as if people weren't already freaked out by a mid-engine Corvette. Now it's an all-wheel drive one.
To Chevy, like it's great. Like they should be doing this with the Vette. Yeah. And they said they wanted to like really just expand so you can get a regular Vette, you can get the E-Ray, then you have the Z06, and soon you're gonna have 1,000 horsepower ZR1 that drives the rear wheels. And I think there will be an E-Ray ZR1. I mean, it won't be called that, but why won't they put the Zora? Like, why won't they put that in the front to give it like ultimate traction? It would be very Porsche 918, Ferrari. I'm drawing a blank here.
La Ferrari.
Yeah, that's right. The one that was called Ferrari. Where like the engine is so powerful, it could keep sending juice to the front tires when it needed a bit of traction. And I think that's like the best setup. But that's what like a lot of prototype race cars adopted because it was just so good. So
anyway, and I mean, look at the new 911T. It's I think if the Corvette was always about pushing boundaries, then this is exactly where it needs to go, is different places, not just a front engine V8 manual sports car, as fun as those are. So good.
I think Chevy never gets enough credit for what you said, pushing boundaries, because people would always be like, oh, leaf springs and fiberglass and push rod. But look what it could do against cars 3 times its cost. And every time a ZR1 comes out, you're like, well, they can't top the last one. Like when the 638 horsepower C6 came out, you're like, oh my God. And then the Z06 had that engine. You're like, well, what are they going to do? And like, here's 755 horsepower, which at the time was nuts. And now they're 1,046 or something off pump gas. Like that's ridiculous.
Yep.
But anyway, so we are just rambling. So we should wrap this up.
It's going to be a fun week.
Yeah. So next week we'll be busy. There's actually a lot of content getting published and put on YouTube. Yes.
there's another EV next week for me as well, although it is not an Altium. I will be driving a Polestar 3.
All right, you're on your trip.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking forward to your thoughts on that, because that's the more appealing, I guess, Polestar. It's not like they're not appealing, but it's an SUV and it's little, so like that's what people's money is right now.
It's not little. It's actually about the size of the iX. It's
All
big.
Right. That's bigger than I thought. So
yeah, it's a competitor for our head-to-head comparison.
Let's say whoever wins, maybe they can have a rematch against the 3 down the road.
That's our plan.
Okay, well, thanks for listening, and we will see you next week, hopefully.
So long, everybody.